welcome, welcome. Let's see if we're live. I think we are. Yeah. Okay, amazing. I'm gonna give people a moment to join. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, perfect. So people are starting to join. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'll just wait a little bit as obviously this is our first day, and so I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to enter and do all of the things. And full transparency, this is the first time I'm doing like lives here on Facebook, so bear with me as I figure this out, but I'm sure we'll do. Hi! Oh, thank you so much for saying hello. It makes it all seem more human than like talking to myself into a machine. So, hi Emmy! Yay! I'm so glad you can hear me. So good to have you. Amazing. All right, so I'm gonna dive right in because I know quite a few people might join when they can, you know, kind of in and out. It's a you know, strange time perhaps for some of us. Hi. So I know some people will be catching up on the replay, which is totally fine. So yeah, let's get started. So welcome, 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 welcome everyone. I'm honestly really glad you're here. Hi, Larry. I'm so happy you're here. I'm really grateful. Welcome to Mastering Your Boundaries. I'm Ariadne. For those of you that we haven't yet had a chance to connect properly, I'm a coach. I'm a mental health professional. I'm a yoga teacher, and I'll be guiding you through the next 3 workshops over the next few days. Hi Georgia, yay! And my intention really, hello, my intention really is to offer you some education and inspiration, if you like, at least initially, as well as some helpful insight into how you can begin to master your boundaries actually from the inside out. Amazing. Hi Danielle. Oh, thank you guys. It makes it so much nicer to have some interaction. Great, amazing. All right. So we're gonna just go in so that we get a chance to connect with how you actually feel about your boundaries. So let's just take a moment, whether you do this now or whether you're catching up later, it doesn't matter. I really recommend that you do this and you don't skip through it or sort of half do it, because it really matters. So maybe just take, lean back on your chair wherever you are and just roll the shoulders. Yeah, and perhaps do a little stretch with the arms, maybe a nice side stretch feeding into the body. And no, we're not going to do yoga. I'm not going to, kind of suddenly start doing sun salutations or anything, but it's quite nice to ground and, give ourselves a chance to arrive. And really an opportunity to go back into ourselves, right? And really that's what boundaries is about. And I'm hoping to talk about, I'm hoping to pass that message on today, which is why we're starting here in our bodies. So let your feet touch the ground if possible, don't worry if not. And let's have one hand on the chest and one hand on the lower belly. Or if that doesn't feel comfortable for any reason, don't worry too much about it. Place the hands wherever is comfortable. If it's okay, close your eyes, and I'm going to do that as well. And take a moment to just breathe. Notice the rhythm of your breath. Let's take a nice breath in together. Gently pause at the top and then open the mouth, big sigh out. Maybe do that one more time. Nice breath in. And then let it out. And just let your hands lower down. And let the breath just flow as it needs to flow, in and out of the nose, in and out of the mouth, whatever you need in this moment. Don't worry too much about it. And as you settle in, just take a moment to feel into your boundaries and what boundaries represent in your case. So when I say the word boundaries, what comes up for you? I'm assuming you're here because you're wanting some guidance, you're wanting some support. Perhaps you know there's a situation or person, or an area in your life where you're finding it challenging. Perhaps you want to deepen this area in your life. Just take a moment to move away from the head and connect to the body as you ask yourself, how do I feel about my own boundaries right now? And then check in with, what's your biggest challenge? In terms of boundaries, what's your biggest challenge? And notice if the mind tries to take over and tell you all the things, and acknowledge that and bring the energy right back into the belly. Stay with the breath. Just notice what else comes up. What else is there apart from the mind chatter? Really nice. When you're ready, just gently open the eyes and feel free to make a note of anything that came up. And if you're comfortable to, share away. How do you feel about your boundaries, or what's your biggest challenge? It's always helpful for me to get an indication of where we're at. So feel free to do that. And as you take your time, right? We're not rushing today. This is day 1 out of 3. So we're going to have 2 more workshops apart from today. And so I want us to dive straight in because there's quite a few topics or aspects of boundaries that I want to talk about and give space to. And I really want to have that psychological foundation, which is why I'm starting right here today. So boundaries is a big topic, and a lot of you know that it's one of my favorite things to talk about. It hasn't been my favorite thing to work on. It's actually quite a challenge for me. Yeah, great. Saying no is my biggest challenge, and not feeling guilty. Yeah, guilt is a huge one, and it's one that we're going to talk about. Thank you. Amazing. So it's not been my favorite thing to work on historically, but it is something that has an incredible influence in, both how I feel about myself and, of course, how that then manifests in my world, in my relationships, in the things I'm able to do. It's really at the core of our relationship to ourselves and the world, right? So healthy boundaries, let's start there. Healthy boundaries are supportive, they're expansive, and they enable you to grow and evolve. They're much less about rigidity and having strict rules. They're actually an opportunity to open, which is possibly quite the opposite of what we often think about, right? When we're feeling challenged about our boundaries, we often think like the solution is to make them even tighter. Beautiful. And boundaries are really an essential part of creating a life that is aligned and that is whole, right? That is actually, inclusive of your complexity and polarity and the reality of being human. And without boundaries, we face big risks, and some of the risks are like unfulfilling or even toxic relationships, right? An inability to, or a sense that we're stuck in our relationships or in our careers, in generally our lives. We might find it difficult to make decisions, to trust ourselves. And other risks, of course, include actual physical danger, right? And these are just a few examples. So whether you actively engage in setting boundaries, you have boundaries, right? The question is how healthy they are and whether they need to be refined. Yeah. So let me check in with some of the sharing that we've done. Okay, perfect. Knowing my own needs and knowing when they're more important than the needs, demands of others. Yes, exactly, Kat. Yeah, absolutely. In work, family, friend relationships, basically everywhere, right? And it's so key, right? It's so interesting that we often feel like, well, it's either my needs or their needs, and we sort of put them like up against each other, and it's really not how it's meant to be. But often, because we have limited resources or we feel like we've got limited time, it's almost like a competition. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. The more difficult thing with the people I love, yeah, partner, friends, family, is that I get sucked in, over caring and forgetting myself in the process. Absolutely. The over giving, over taking care of others and self abandoning is basically, probably at the top of the the presentations, for want of a better word, that I've worked with the most when people are struggling with boundaries, because it's something that has been really reinforced over time, right? It's reinforced by society, our cultures, like, let's take care of each other and yeah, let's be good humans, and that's absolutely great, but not at the detriment of ourselves and our mental health and our capacity to, to live the life that we want to live. Amazing. Boundaries with myself, with others, and my phone. Oh yeah. If we could, like, yeah, put our hands up with the phone, technology, absolutely. Definitely. Meeting my own needs with the pressure to please people. Yeah. Also has moved to whole new realms when creating boundaries as a parent. Yes, absolutely. Exploring this myself. Really, rich area to work on. Yes. Amazing. Thank you all for sharing. Feel free to keep sharing if things come up. Amazing. Okay. So really my priority today is to plant helpful seeds for exploring where you are in terms of your boundaries, what needs to start to, what we need to start to tweak, both in terms of the boundaries themselves, but actually how you view and what you think of when you think about boundaries. I have found that a lot of the advice out there on boundary setting is mostly about communicating your boundaries to other people, right? Like how to communicate your boundaries, how your boundaries may be crossed by others, and like what to do about it, which is all well and good, and it's really important. But having worked on this myself for years, still working on it, disclaimer, it never ends, and also having supported clients with this topic, what I know to be true is that boundaries are less about others than we think. Yeah, I think now the emphasis is something like 80% communication with others and how to, how to deal with the consequences, how to deal with the conflict, how to deal with the guilt, and sort of 20% about, knowing what we need and so on. And I want to flip that percentage, right? Understanding what leads others and ourselves to cross our boundaries is key, absolutely. So I'm not negating that. And the reason why our boundaries get crossed by ourselves or by other people is because that boundary itself tends to be blurry, tends to be weak, or unclear, right? So when our boundaries are weak, if they're sort of misplaced, or if they're, kind of flimsy, it is inevitable that we will experience negative consequences, including the violation from others, but also the impact on our own well-being, on our own safety, or on our own sanity, depending on what the boundary is about. So when people cross our boundaries, and when we cross our own boundaries, we end up suffering. That is the point when we realize, oh wait, I need to take action, something's not working. This is where we feel it, right? We feel the consequence, and it's also when the guilt is activated, and guilt is a very strong emotion that triggers a reaction, right? So naturally, that is usually where people start to ask for help, right? Where we start to realize, okay, I need advice on boundaries, I need to fix this, I need to figure out why this is, why my boundaries are not being respected. However, it's not actually where the majority of the work needs to be done, and it's, you know, it's not where the solution will be found. So mastering your boundaries is actually about going into the psychology of boundaries, and viewing boundaries as a practice rather than sort of rules, right? So boundaries are not actually the words we say when we are communicating them, right? So let me say this again. Boundaries are not actually the words that we say when we communicate them. Boundaries are actually the inner work that comes first before the outer work that comes with expressing those boundaries. Are you with me? Leave me a little whatever, like smiley face or something, you know, just to make sure that this is making sense, right? So when we look at boundaries as a practice, we start to step away from thinking, well, it's the phrase that I use that helps others know what my boundary is, which is absolutely true on some level, but actually, amazing, but actually what true boundaries are, I know, we're processing, right? We're trying to process, there's like, what true boundaries are is the work that's going on inside, because it's from there that we have the capacity, yay Giovanna, we have the capacity to communicate the boundary in a way that others can understand, but also in a way that respects who we are and means that over time we are more likely to respect ourselves. Now, this is a huge thing, right? So this is really, as I said, we're planting seeds so that we can start to tweak how we see things. So, for example, right, setting a boundary, a very simple example, setting a boundary doesn't happen when I say stop doing this, right? So the word stop, or when I, you know, utter the word stop to someone else, is not actually the boundary. It is the manifestation of the boundary, right? Or the expression of it. But the boundary begins with me inside, right? Knowing, or working on knowing, how far is okay for me, and how far is not safe anymore, right? What feels safe and good? Where am I comfortable and where am I not? As well as the work that goes into me knowing right here, before I even think about the outside, the work that goes into me knowing that it is my right to express my wish that it stops right here, and that I can expect others then to respect that, right? Does that make sense? So it's not the me saying stop that's the boundary, it's knowing that I can say stop, knowing where I want to put that stop, knowing why that's important to me. This is the boundary work that needs to be done. The stop is, you know, yes, having the language, having the ability to manage a response, right? To manage the reaction or how we feel about what response is coming out from other people. But actually, so much of the boundary work that needs to be done is us, right? Inside us, protecting ourselves. So if we stop viewing boundaries as sort of rigid rules, as I said before, with the outside world, so kind of like the physical borders between countries, and we start to look at them from the perspective of our own psychological health, everything starts to change. Yeah. The work that needs to be done for healthy boundaries is all about taking self-responsibility, which is really annoying, right? It is really annoying. It's a lot of work to take responsibility, right? Responsibility for, you know, the patterns that we keep playing up, right? The unconscious sort of drives and behaviors that we keep falling into, that most likely we have learned through childhood and how we related to our caregivers, right? You know, how we relate to the world, how we relate to people close to us, how we relate to people we don't know, our expectations, our assumptions, our actions, our habits. taking full responsibility of those is actually the core of boundary work. And starting to break the cycle of unhelpful beliefs that underpin those behaviors, right? So our behaviors will stem from beliefs that we carry around, right? And those beliefs have been built over time. They do get planted early on, right? And a lot of those beliefs, which we're going to be exploring a little bit tomorrow in the second workshop, a lot of those unhelpful beliefs actually lead to weak, or the opposite, really rigid boundaries, right? So the work really begins with self-awareness, yeah? It's very easy for us to go into blame, which is why self-awareness has to come first. So when we think of boundaries, most of us think of, like, as I said before, like the area in our lives where someone is crossing our boundary, yeah? For example, and this might speak to Emmy, you know, as a new mother myself, when family members, for example, or non-family members, but let's go with family, crossing my boundary and giving unsolicited advice, yeah? So it's easy for me to assess the situation by going into victim mode, right? And blaming others, so throwing the guilt out, the blame out there, thinking that, well, they believe that I need their advice. Why are they giving me advice? I don't want it. I'm fine. So some beliefs that I might hold, right, that lead to this sort of pattern is they think they know better. They think I'm not a good enough mother. They think I'm not taking care of my child properly. They don't trust me. Other beliefs could be I'm doing this wrong. Maybe they are better. I don't know what I'm doing. So I could, with this example, I could go into victim mode, right? Self-abandon my beliefs and my intuition, and allow others to take over and, deal with my child in a way that doesn't align with how I wanted to raise him, right? Which then leaves me feeling resentful and ultimately not giving me the chance, so I'm not giving myself the chance to build trust in myself as a mother. Yeah. I could also go into blame mode and pass on that responsibility, as I said earlier, to others for not respecting me, and carry those narratives around, well, they're not listening to me, they're not respecting me, they're not respecting me as a mother, they're not allowing me to do it my way. They think they know best. And my behavior out of those beliefs might be to argue, might be to blame them. It might also be to shut everyone out, which then will leave me feeling hurt, right, and isolated, and actually unable to ask for the help or even receive the help that I, absolutely do need. But I need it in the form that I need it. Another way that I could respond to the scenario is I could detach, right, and try to, overly protect myself and kind of disappear or not argue or, not give anybody a chance to cross my boundaries. Either way, right, these are just a few of the ways that we might be responding, but either way, I'm not taking responsibility for how I show up in the scenario, right? And what narratives I'm holding, and where am I responding from, right? Is this making sense? Are we getting it? Like, this can be like quite icky, because it's quite nice to be like, well, it's their fault. They should know that I don't want to do this. Yeah. I need the help in the way that I need it. Yes, Nicola, exactly. Yeah. But how are they going to know? What is the help that I need? How do I need it? Have I even spent the time? Have I taken that responsibility to explore what do I need, and have I then communicated that? Can I be okay with, having different opinions? Can I hold different opinions without that meaning that I'm wrong or other people are wrong? Yeah. So if my belief, right, is they think I'm not a good enough mother, for example, I'm likely to allow my boundaries to be crossed, either by not setting them or making them too blurry, or sort of pretending like, oh, it doesn't matter, it's fine, don't worry about it, right? By allowing others to take over, okay? By doubting myself, I'm actually reacting to my own interpretation, to my own projection of the situation. Yeah. It is my underlying beliefs that govern how I react, okay? And so it would not really be enough for me to just practice saying, I'm not looking for advice, thank you very much, right? Which is often what we're told to do. And although this is important, right, practicing the language to express our boundaries, I'm not looking for advice, thank you, it's not even half the job. Because the work has to begin much deeper, right? In working with those beliefs that I hold about myself, right? Because if I don't believe that I can trust myself, if I'm not clear in what I need, then I'm going to keep falling into the same pattern, right? So it is about working on those beliefs that you hold about yourself in that situation, right? What triggers you and why it triggers you, and how you tend to respond, like knowing ourselves. That's why self-awareness is number one. Without this information, you're likely to keep falling into the same trap, in this example of like unsolicited advice, because you're going to end up attracting those people that are fixers or rescuers, regardless of how many times you state verbally, I don't need this, thank you very much. Because the way that you act and the way that you relate might not make it so clear, right? Okay, let me check in with, yes. Okay, so we're just writing that. Sometimes it's hard to identify what it is that you need when you've been squashing it down or bending to suit others. 100%, which is why it gets really confusing and why it's so multi-layered, because we, especially people who identify with that behavior of pleasing others above ourselves, or putting our needs sort of chronically, if you like, above our own, below our others. Let me say that again. Putting other people's needs, above our own. It often stems from, without wanting to make too much interpretation, right? So not speaking to anybody specific, and please take this with a pinch of salt, but often what we know about this presentation, or about this sort of habit of like putting others above us, is that it's actually probably stems from a place of needing to do that to be safe as a child, right? So whether that was in your care, in your family home, at school, in other situations, at some point we learn that it's safer, right, to let others lead. So we don't actually start to pay attention to our needs because perhaps they're not being met, and so we learn that that's not important. What's more important is that we take care of others, because if we take care of others, then we'll be safe. Right? So there's a few different layers to this, but I'm offering that as a sort of, again, a little seed, right? It stems from a very deep need to keep safe, right? Yeah, exactly. So, exactly, you end up gaslighting yourself, absolutely. And so when people say, trust your intuition, a lot of us are like, what's that? I don't even know what I need. Even if I have the time to sit down, right? If I make the space and I block everybody out and I do a social media detox and so on, I don't know what I need, because I've blocked it. Exactly. I've squashed it down. And so it takes so much unpicking and unlearning. Right. Okay. So moving on. You're very welcome. Very welcome. So this really is just a little, it gives you, hopefully it gives you an idea, right? An initial idea as to the role that psychological factors play in that boundary work. And as I said, in the next workshop, we're going to look at some of the most common beliefs. We've already touched on some of them today, but those beliefs that most commonly people hold that affect the health of, you know, our boundaries, especially around the fear and guilt of hurting others by setting those boundaries, you know, attaching our worth to how much you're needed or how much you produce, right? Which, exactly. Yes, potentially you've also been repeatedly told that your way is wrong. Exactly, yeah. So sometimes it's done directly that way, right? Sometimes it's completely, you know, indirectly you learn that, oh, it's safer to trust, you know, to let others, because my way might not be right. But sometimes you're told, actually repeatedly told that. Yeah, so thank you for sharing, Nicola. So yeah, some of the beliefs we're going to look at is attaching your worth to, you know, how much you're valued, how much you're needed, or how much you produce, as well as some other, couple others, you know, big ones. So the last thing I wanna share today is a very practical tool, right, in supporting you to take responsibility and to do that by starting to assess the health of your boundaries. And I've called it the boundary audit. And you'll actually receive access to that through a Google Doc. So you'll have all of that. And it's a step-by-step process. And what I'm going to suggest is that you take this as homework, right? And you take some time, ideally today, at least before you get to, you know, the next workshop, so that you reflect and see what comes up for you. And it really gives you an opportunity to be with, okay, what's the situation, right? What is going on? What are the stories I'm telling myself? What beliefs am I holding? What am I sort of responding to? What are my go-to behaviors here? So it really breaks down the process. Yeah. Let me just check in here. What you just said also relates to the workplace. Yes, just did a money mindset workshop yesterday. There's a cross. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So I gave a very specific example around, you know, motherhood, but absolutely these beliefs will, if we hold them, you know, think of them as sort of roots, right? They will then feed into the trunk and to the branches and to the leaves and to the flowers. Like, it actually affects and manifests in so many different ways. And for some of us, we can sort of recognize one area. So a lot of people, for example, can maybe manage, let's say, you know, how they present themselves in their friendships. And then when it comes to their intimate relationship with their partner, there might be a lot of triggering there. Equally, they might find that it's really challenging when they are in that, you know, space where they need to prove themselves, or they feel like they're being judged in their careers and so on. So much. Yeah, amazing. Okay, so I want us to close today by sitting with 3 key prompts, right? I'm going to share them verbally here, and then you're going to have them in the group so that you can sit with them and work with them if you want to. But they're really just an opportunity to be with the key learnings from today. Yeah? So let's take a moment again, just like we started. I want you to sit back if you can. If you're making notes, just put it to the side. You can come back to that. And if you're comfortable, to close your eyes. And you might take a moment to come back to your body. Feel that breath. Let the breath fill up the torso. Imagine that you can breathe towards the back of the body, the sides of the body, as well as the front. Let the breath ground you for a moment. With your eyes closed, see if you can bring your awareness down to the belly, or even down to the hips. And focus there. Perhaps imagine that you can breathe in and out through the belly, through the hips. And then sit with the following questions. Where am I giving my power away? So where in my life am I giving my power away? Where am I lacking clarity? And where am I stuck in an old, unhelpful pattern? Where am I stuck in an old, unhelpful pattern? Notice what comes up. Try not to judge it. Try not to intellectualize it. When you're ready, take a nice big breath in through the nose and let it out through the mouth. Letting the eyes open if they've been closed, and maybe just shake it out. Tapping into the body if you want, just coming back. And as you come back, feel free to make any notes, making a note of any guidance that came up for you. And that's gold right there, right? Okay, good. How are we feeling? So we're gonna close. Right after this, as I said, you'll get access to the boundary audit tool and those 3 reflective points, so that you can work on those before we meet again tomorrow and over the next few days. I'd really encourage you to keep this going into, it's so easy to sort of be with this and then kind of disconnect. What I would encourage you to do is dedicate some time later on today to work through these suggestions, and also to come back in here and share your biggest takeaway from today, and share that in the group, so that we can support each other and inspire each other. And as you've seen, we all relate in the way that boundaries sort of challenge us, and this is tough work, right? But we get to do it together, and really that makes a world of difference. So use this space, share where you're at, and we're going to meet again here tomorrow, right? Really, really well done. Lots of love, and I'll see you soon. All right? Thank you, everybody. Really well done. Absolute pleasure. Well done, everybody. See you soon. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye. Well done.